So I started the San Diego Arts, which is the San Diego Academy of Regenerative Therapies and Science, and we had our first conference in 2017. And we've had them every year, minus 2 COVID years since. And so we have it usually in first part of August, end of July, first part of August every year at UCSD in San Diego.
It's at the university?
Mm-hmm.
And if a person wanted to go, say, this year, how would they register? How do they get to go? And can a non-physician go? How does that work? Who's invited?
Yeah. Anybody. We have nurse practitioners coming, and a lot of doctors like to have their nurse come with them. And we have industry people that come, so anybody is invited. It's primarily didactic presentations, and for the first 2.5 days, and then we have a cadaver labs. And so the website is sdarts.com.
That's sdarts.com. And that's how they would register?
That would take them to the site, yeah, and they can register there.
Okay. And your next one is this year for 2025 is July?
So July 31st through August
July
3rd.
31st through August 3rd. So there's plenty of time to register. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Technology of Beauty, where I have the opportunity to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business, and today is no exception. Today we have Marcille Pilkington from Tulip. Is it Tulip Technologies or Tulip?
Tulip Medical Products.
Tulip Medical Products. Thank you very much for joining us today. Where'd you come in from?
San Diego.
Great. Did you drive up?
We came up last night, actually.
Oh,
and just
wonderful.
made a little trip of it.
Oh, that's
nice.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it. And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Idaho.
What part of Idaho?
Well, I was born in Lewiston, Idaho.
Uh-huh.
And then my father worked for the state of Idaho. He was a civil engineer. And so we moved back and forth between the Boise area and the Lewiston area multiple times.
Did you know that I live in Idaho?
When I saw you in Austin, you had, I think, on your name badge it said Ketchum, Idaho.
Something like that. Yeah, I live in Sun Valley or Ketchum, Haley. Yeah, we've had a place there for many years, and that's our full-time residence now.
It is.
And this is our part-time residence here in Manhattan Beach.
Oh,
our full-time residence is in Idaho.
That's a big change from
we
Southern California.
Like it. Manhattan Beach is the bubble as we know it. It's very different here than anywhere else in Southern California, in my opinion. So it's wonderful. I love it. In any event, so welcome, first of all. There's a lot to talk about, and we want to hear all about Tulip. But before, when you were in Idaho, going back and forth between Lewiston and Boise, where did you go to college initially?
Well, we left Idaho when I was a teenager.
Oh, okay, good. Where'd you go then?
So we came to Arizona. My father took a job in Phoenix, and so we moved to Phoenix and then to Tucson. Uh-huh. And so I went to a college in Bethany, Oklahoma for a short period of time because I was raised in the Nazarene Church, which is quite it's a very closed community, so to speak, kind of a small one. And so I went to their college there in Bethany for a couple of years and did not like it. So I came back and I went to school at the U of A for a while.
Uh-huh.
But then I dropped out. I left college.
Okay. And what was your first job?
My first real job.
Yeah, but post-college. Where did you start?
Well, other than teenage work, but my first real job was administrative for Harris Lanier. They make, at the time, dictation equipment and that kind of thing. And so I would dispatch repair people to go out and fix people's dictation machines.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Harris Lanier. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how'd you get to aesthetics?
Well, from that job, I was looking for a sales job. And this was in Tucson, Arizona. And I answered an ad from the Wells Johnson Company.
Sure.
And I didn't know anything about it, but they were one of the first companies to build liposuction equipment, as you know.
Yep.
And got hired there. And that's...
As a salesperson?
As a salesperson.
Okay. And were your home base was the Tucson area?
Uh-huh.
So that was area where you sold the Wells Johnsons?
No, we traveled all over the country to go to conferences and to show the equipment. And so I went all over the country, and we did some international travel also.
About what year was that?
That was...
Like in the 80s?
Yeah, that was in the early 80s.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I remember those days, believe it or not.
Well, that's when liposuction was new. You know,
Brand
it had
new.
just come over to the U.S. from Europe, and there was no equipment for it, so it was a good market.
Yes, indeed. How long did you work for Wells Johnson?
I worked there for a couple of years until Wells and Johnson split up, and I went with Johnson, and he ended up being my husband eventually.
I'll be darned.
And yeah, we started our own company, which turned into Tulip eventually.
So Wells Johnson split, and Johnson became Tulip?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What's the derivation of the name, or where does Tulip come from?
We went over to Paris, France, to visit with Fournier, Pierre Fournier.
Yes, of course.
And one of the fathers of liposuction. And he was doing fat transplant. He was doing liposuction, but was also experimenting with large volume fat transplant.
Uh-huh.
And he was cutting the cannula tip off the handle and taping it to a large volume syringe and doing suction with that syringe and then doing transfer.
Okay.
And so he called John and wanted to have him come over and see what he was doing and make some equipment for him.
Okay.
And so we went over there, and he watched how it was being done, and decided that if we put a hub on a cannula instead of a handle that would fit over the end of the syringe, that would work. And that's what we ended up doing. And when you hold it up, it looked kind of like a tulip. It was shaped like a tulip.
I'll be darned.
And people started calling it that, so that's what it became, and that's what the company became.
That's wonderful. I didn't know the derivation of that. Okay, and what
Yeah.
year was Tulip formed?
It was formed in 91.
Uh-huh. I used some of those cannulas.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good to
So
hear.
in 91, okay, and so, and that's when Tulip started? It's certainly when it was named, but you already had Tulip going? It wasn't...
We had started as, I forget the name officially,
Johnson?
yeah, something to do with his name.
Uh-huh.
And then people kept calling and saying, "Are you the Tulip people? Is this the Tulip Company?" And so we officially named it the Tulip Company at that point.
And where were you located at that time? What was
In
your
San
headquarters?
Diego.
In San Diego, okay. And that's where you've been ever since?
Yep.
What other products have you developed and marketed there at Tulip?
Primarily, it's been for fat transfer. We started out with liposuction, but then early on went into fat transfer. And while a lot of the people in a lot of the companies in liposuction were building bigger and bigger machines and bigger cannulas, because as you remember, in the early days, it was about getting as much fat out as we could, as fast
Right.
as possible.
Right.
We really started going small and went for fat transfer because it was... the potential for it seemed a lot bigger to us, and so we were the first ones that invented like the 0.9 injector
Sure.
for small volume. And over the years, we got into fat transfer more so than liposuction, and then we hired Ramon Huey and what's his name, Adam Katz. They were in Pittsburgh under Bill Futrell,
Yeah, sure.
and we had a contract with them to find out what's in the fat tissue, because John was convinced there was a lot of good stuff in that fat tissue. And so we did a research contract with them, and they were the first ones to publish that we could grow chondrocytes out of fat tissue,
Sure.
the precursor for cartilage. And so that was a really big deal. And then we started looking into more and more what is in that fat tissue.
Right.
And that kind of led me into an interest in the regenerative medicine part of fat as opposed to just the aesthetics part. So we started looking into that, and about that time, it was 2011, John died. He passed away, and so I took over the company. And we were watching what Tenard and Verpel were doing from Belgium.
Belgium, yep.
The publications that they and the results they were getting with this nanofat. And so I went over there and worked with them to develop a system for nanofat, because they were using a nylon curtain cloth and a teaspoon from the kitchen. And,
I remember this when
and
he
the
was
jar.
presenting it.
Yeah.
And pushing it through the cloth.
And people wanted to do NanoFat, but that was not reproducible, obviously, in other doctors' hands. And so that's when we started developing our NanoFat system. And so that's probably the most exciting thing I think we've done in the whole history of the company, because NanoFat has spread so far beyond aesthetics because of all the things it can do for wound healing, for hair restoration, for joints. It's really pretty remarkable.
Tell us a little bit about your technology to actually go from the harvest of the fat via lipo to then producing the NanoFat grafting. What?
Yeah.
Since they can't see it right now.
Yeah. Okay. It's very low tech. You just we recommend harvesting with a syringe because we've discovered every step along the way that if you vary the step, then you get a different result.
Sure.
Slightly different sometimes or more. So we recommend harvesting with a syringe and a cannula that we call the Caraway. And then we take the harvested fat and we start sizing it down from 2.4 millimeter down to a 1.2 in a series of sizing, because you can't go from regular fat, which we call microfat, right down to nanofat. It's just too chunky and too many fibers in the tissue. So you have to kind of size it down in a series of steps.
Can you describe how you size it down?
Yeah, we just use little transfers that have different diameters. And so
They're like filters, right?
Yeah, but they aren't technically a filter because
No.
they just break up the tissue.
Okay.
It's just kind of like emulsifying. And if you, then the final step is a screen that we have in our nanotransfer that is a 400 and 600 micron double screen.
Okay.
And that sizes it down to an injectability rating of 30 gauge. So you can inject with a 30 gauge needle and you still have all the viable cells.
So a 30 gauge needle is very, very small for those of you who aren't injectors. About the size of a hair, a little bit bigger than a hair. So that's wonderful. And NanoFat is so popular now, especially in the face and in small areas.
It's really great, especially around the eyes, because it's difficult to use fat around the eyes if it's microfat, just because the skin is so thin. You can tell
right
more
through.
about that. Yeah. But it's also being used a lot for hair restoration. They're injecting nanofat into the hair follicles, and it doesn't work for every type of hair loss, but it works for some types.
Okay.
It's being used a lot for wound healing, for difficult wounds like diabetic wounds that are hard to heal.
Okay.
They can inject nanofat around the lesion, and sometimes you have to do it 3 or 4 times. And then the lesion will start to heal. It'll start to grow together again.
And is it being used in ortho also?
It is.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I saw an ultrasound image of a knee from a gentleman who was going to have a knee replacement. And where there should be like a thick pad of cartilage, there was just a little thin white layer. And then they treated it with NanoFat and PRP mixed together. And the 6-month after image from the ultrasound showed a nice thick layer of white, which is the cartilage, the repair. And it blew my mind. I had no idea tissue from fat could do that.
So did he go on and have a knee replacement?
No, well, maybe someday, but not then.
But not then, right.
Right.
So he's able to grow new cartilage with his own fat.
Yep.
That's terrific. So you were mentioning the nanofats used around the eyes in different areas. Where do you find most of it being used in aesthetics? Is there a particular place where most of it's being used?
It's being used almost all the time with microneedling.
Microneedling.
Topically with microneedling, it does wonders for the skin.
So it's applied topically, it's not injected?
It's applied topically, and then when they're doing the microneedling, they kind of rub it in, and the microneedling injects it. If they have an injecting microneedling, sometimes it's just a punching one.
Right.
But yeah, it does wonders for the skin, and it also does wonders topically after laser resurfacing.
Sure.
You rub it on topically for like the 2 or 3 days, and the healing is much faster.
Interesting. So tell me about the regenerative medicine. You said you're very interested in that. And how'd that come about, and where are you at as a company and individually with that?
Well, it came about really with the orthopedic field first.
Okay.
We were working, and still am, with Dr. Robert Alexander, who is out of Montana.
Uh-huh.
And he's an oral maxillofacial guy by training, and he was doing aesthetics, and then he was retiring, ready to retire, and then all this information came out about fat and what could be done with it. And so he is really one of the pioneers of regenerative therapies, and especially mixing it with PRP, high-density PRP, and using it for joint repair. And so that's really what got us started into the regenerative side of things. And then we started hearing more from other doctors. They would contact us and say, I'm using it for hair or for wound healing. And it just kind of spread from there. And that's just lesionally. I mean, they're also using it intravenously for clinical trials in things like COPD, and getting really, really good results.
Interesting. Now, you have a meeting in San Diego every year, right?
Yes.
And tell us about that.
Okay, so in 2017, I think it was, after we were seeing all these results for regenerative therapies, I wanted to find a way to teach people not only how to perform these therapies, but also to get more word out to the public about these things that are available, these options that they have.
Okay.
It doesn't treat everything, but the things it does really well. And I think a lot of people would opt for trying that if they knew about them. So I started the San Diego Arts, which is the San Diego Academy of Regenerative Therapies and Science, and we had our first conference in 2017. And we've had them every year, minus 2 COVID years since. And so we have it usually in first part of August, end of July, first part of August every year at UCSD in San Diego.
It's at the university?
Mm-hmm.
And if a person wanted to go, say, this year, how would they register? How do they get to go? And can a non-physician go? How does that work? Who's invited?
Yeah. Anybody. We have nurse practitioners coming, and a lot of doctors like to have their nurse come with them. And we have industry people that come, so anybody is invited. It's primarily didactic presentations, and for the first 2.5 days, and then we have cadaver labs. And so the website is sdarts.com.
That's sdarts.com. And that's how they would register?
That would take them to the site, yeah, and they can register there.
Okay. And your next one is this year for 2025 is July?
So, July 31st through August
July
3rd.
31st through August 3rd. So there's plenty of time to register. And with the registration packet, is there information about accommodations or other activities and so forth?
Yeah, it's all on the website, and it's a really nice mix of different specialties. And we found that people are a little hesitant about that mix until they come, and then they learn a lot from their peers in other specialties, because it's kind of the same thing, just being used in a different way. And so the orthopedics, everybody's interested in the orthopedic applications, because sooner or later we're probably going to get sore knees or a sore shoulder or something. And it's really interesting to see how these regenerative therapies are working with different areas of the body. There's a lot of benefit to cross-pollination. And we have the science, like Dr. Ramon Yui. I don't know if you know him, but
I do not.
He was one of the residents who we worked with early on in Pittsburgh, and now he's gone on to become probably the world's expert in adipose tissue in science. And he's also a plastic surgeon, and he works he's at Wake Forest right now, and they have a big regenerative department there. And so he brings a lot with the pure science, He's very good at breaking it down so we can understand it. But it's fascinating because when you see that your own body's tissue taken out from one place where you might have a little more than you want and put into a place that's been depleted of regenerative cells, it can right itself. It
Isn't
can
that
right
amazing?
that whole niche. Yeah.
That's incredible. It's just
Yeah.
remarkable that we can take adipocytes, fat cells, and
I
make
know.
cartilage and various other things.
Remember when it all used to be thrown away?
Yes, I certainly do. That's
Yeah.
what we routinely did.
Yeah,
It's,
and now
to think about it, it's a travesty. But talk to us a little bit more about the hair business, because so many men and now women are complaining of thinning and losing hair, thinning hair and just losing hair.
Yeah.
Failure to have hair growth, or it's getting thinner and so forth. It's a huge issue. And
is.
more and more people are using fat to stimulate the hair follicles. And you mentioned for some types of hair loss, it's more effective than others. How does one know when it's going to be effective? Is it just after injecting it?
I think that right now there are probably a few people in the world who would know ahead of time. It's a field that is fairly new to regenerative therapies.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of it is a trial and error in the beginning. The good thing is there's no risk involved really. A little pain maybe in the injections, but there's no risk involved. John Cole he's probably the biggest hair expert in the world on regenerative restoration, and he's a speaker at our conference every year. And he has many different combinations of therapies that he's developed for hair loss, depending on what the cause of the hair loss is.
Okay.
So it's not always just a nanofat injection can fix it. But there are a lot of combination therapies that can be used, and he says he can grow hair on anybody's head.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
That's quite a statement.
It is, yeah. And he's not a guy who would say something like that if he hasn't done it, I think. At least so far.
I'd like to have him on our show.
You would like him.
Yeah.
He's a really bright guy.
What type of physician is he? I know this crosses specialties. I'm just curious. Do you know?
Don't know.
Okay.
I
I'm
don't
just curious.
know.
I'll look him up.
Yeah,
You
he's
mentioned to
very
him, if you
interesting.
see him this year, I'll be out of the country, unfortunately, or I would go to your meeting. But I will be out of the country and cannot attend. But maybe you can mention to John that I'd love to have him up here. We have many people coming on about hair, and just like Paul Hirschman with Get Hair MD. And as you know, we're coming at it, or all of us are coming at it so many different ways. Injectables, orals, light-based, this light, the other light, so forth. Topicals. There's just so many approaches to this. Non-surgical.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we're
you
interested.
Do you know Dr. Shafu?
Yes,
from
of course I
San Diego? Okay. Well, you may be involved in it too, but he's involved in they're doing, trying to clone hair follicles. And he comes to the conference and gives us an update, because that's a promising research. I don't know if it'll ever come to fruition, but I certainly hope so.
I didn't know Dr. Shafu was actually cloning hair.
Well, he's involved he's working with the group that are doing that.
Okay.
They're trying to do it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about that also. It's a huge market, as you know.
It is a huge market.
And it was really exacerbated during COVID when so many people lost their hair, and then and women like crazy lost their hair.
Well, Debbie Toombs, she talks about that all the time.
You know, that's
'Cause
right.
she
She did
lost-
talk to me about that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
She went and got treated by Dan Gould in Beverly Hills, who does a lot of hair.
Right. My resident, and then my fellow, Dan Gold.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, and so, she was losing a lot of her hair apparently from COVID, and now she's got a really thick head of hair.
I think he did PRP, didn't he?
I think
PRP
he did
injections?
PRP and I think fat also.
And fat, okay.
Yeah, so she's always one of our volunteers to tell the story.
Well, she has a lovely head of hair now.
She does.
I saw her in Austin, and her hair is as thick as yours. It looked great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for being a guest on our show.
Well, it's been a
been
pleasure.
fabulous getting to know you better and getting to know the tulip story. That's wild. I had no idea that's how you came up with that name.
Well, We've been around a long
Good
time.
for me
so.
to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're still innovating.
Yeah.
So that's the key, right?
That's what turns me on. It's no fun just to sell the same thing all the time.
No, not at all.
Got to do new things.
Uh-huh. Well, give my regards to Debbie, please.
I will.
And let John know I'd like to interview him and have a
Okay.
wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully you'll be at the Aesthetic Society show in Boston
We will.
next spring.
Yep. We'll
That would
there.
be great. If you need anything, if you want to talk about your booth or if you need anything, let me know. I'm the head of industry relations and would be happy
good.
to help you wherever I can. And I've worked with Debbie for many years, as you know.
Yeah, she speaks
And
very
she
highly
can,
of you.
She can also grease the skids, even though she's not there full time, but she can certainly help
She
you.
still knows people.
Oh, absolutely. She knows everybody.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you there, if not sooner. Take care
All
and
right.
safe travels back to San Diego.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you all for joining us in this exciting episode of The Technology of Beauty, where I have the opportunity to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. And as you can see, today was no exception, and we figured out why it's called Tulip. Take care. We'll see you every Tuesday, a new program every Tuesday. Please subscribe to The Technology of Beauty on YouTube. Thank you. Bye-bye.